genealogy sites. So there's third-party doctrine implications and stuff. It's
get it from the site.
So basically, the police set up a fake account on this genealogy site and submitted the DNA that they had from the crime scene. And then other people who were trying to figure out their genealogy submitted, and then they found relatives that way that they had from the crime scene. Oops, now we're streaming.
Yeah, we're streaming, so wait. All right, we're going to be going live in, I don't know.
1 minute until showtime.
1 minute, although the clock says 1:14.
Okay.
All right, let's see. What am I doing here? All right, let's change this to public chat. Right.
I'll turn on over at YouTube myself.
Open that one. Go there. Too dark? I don't know if the picture's too dark. Is it too dark?
It's a little darker this way. It's not too dark as far as I can tell. That's brighter. How is it on YouTube is the question as well, because
I don't know.
YouTube is another layer. And so I guess Facebook probably has its own filter, right?
I turned YouTube.
Oh, the other thing is you probably want to switch the view so that we're both on.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. Right.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody, and
Talk Radio.
oh, there we go. Now, hello, everybody, and welcome to Yaron and Amy show. I think I streamed Facebook a little late, so I'm not sure if you guys are there. All right, I think we're live now.
Excellent.
We've definitely got an audience on YouTube. That's good. And I think people will be joining here momentarily on Facebook as well.
Okay.
Jonathan says we're looking good. Hi, Amy. How's it going?
It's going okay. I've been running around like crazy with just stupid stuff, you know, the car accident, and then maybe I was getting sick, but I'm not. And, you know, just the usual.
Right.
I travel tomorrow, so it's just like everything that can happen between now and then. So
Yeah. No, it's difficult. Yeah, I can't remember this week. What happened this week? I don't know. I was recovering from jet lag, I think, mostly doing shows and recovering from jet lag. I'm taking tomorrow off. No show tomorrow. Taking tomorrow off. I'm going to an art museum tomorrow in Ponce, in Puerto Rico, Ponce.
I'm pretty sure you deserve a day off.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm pretty sure. And especially after today, I'm going to make you work so hard.
All right. Hey, Pam is there. Pam's on a boat sailing, you know.
Even if she's on her boat sailing, she could probably join us these days with the tech the way it is. No, not that. No?
The point of going off sailing is to avoid the internet and to avoid us and to avoid everybody.
To avoid us?
All right, Dan, send me. Yeah, figured it out. Yes, I'm going to see Frederick Layton's Flaming June at the Ponce Museum of Art. So
wow.
I've never seen it live. I've got a poster on the wall, but I've never seen it live. So I'm going to see it. I've got that poster beautifully framed on our wall here in Puerto Rico, but I'm going to see the painting live.
So it's a traveling exhibit. That's wonderful. Yeah. What's that? Is it a traveling exhibit?
No, it's the permanent home of Frederick Layton's Flaming June.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Say Puerto Rico. And for years and years and years, I thought, oh my God, I'll never see that painting, because who the hell is ever going to go to Puerto Rico, right? Who wants to go to Puerto Rico and to Ponce? And here I am living in Puerto Rico, and I haven't gone to see it yet because I it's not in San Juan, and because of the hurricane, we haven't traveled too much. But tomorrow, I think we can get in the car and just drive to Ponce. And
I love it. That's fabulous.
Layton in person is awesome. Yeah, and for those of you who live in London, those of you who visit London, Frederick Layton, there's a museum just dedicated to Frederick Layton in London. It's called the Layton Home, Frederick Layton Home. It's the house he lived in, and it's got some sculpture of his and some paintings of his, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. And definitely, if you're in London, worth a site trip to go see it. And of course, if you're interested in Layton and in the artwork of that period from England, the Tate London has a lot of that art, one of my favorite museums in the world. Not the Tate Modern, That's one of the shittiest museums in the world. But the Tate London, the old Tate, there's a whole wing of the old Tate that is just dedicated to 19th century painting and sculpture, and gorgeous, some of the most beautiful sculptures anyway. So
Wow.
You're in London, that's where you should go.
Well, excellent. I'm glad you get to go see this tomorrow. Then you'll have to let us know. Okay, so let me get you working so that you can really earn that day off tomorrow. The topic I told you before, I'm calling it, why not Atlas Lobbied? And it's because we're still having this discussion about perhaps bringing some sort of regulation to bear on Facebook and other social media companies. Mostly people are talking about it from the angle of potential, quote, censorship, the filtering mechanisms that appear to a lot of people to be biased against conservatives, right? So, there's a whole bunch of questions that have been stewing around. I've got my little list all organized. So if you don't mind, can I go through with you and
go through the list before I boil over and lash out?
Okay, well, let's not boil over, lash out, because I have some real questions here, because I've been talking about this some with friends and everything, and just really trying to nail down
what say during what we talk about that I disagree with Ayn Rand, but go ahead.
Well, and I think I may disagree with her as well, right? So I'm at least open to that, but the applicability. Anyway, let's not get ahead. So there's first this factual issue. There are a number of people who are just on the assumption that Facebook, whether, Zuckerberg, all the employees who are working for him, everybody, that they are working to bring about some sort of authoritarian or totalitarian society, a really leftist government, that this is their actual goal. And moreover, that their goal is to use Facebook as a way to achieve that. We can't necessarily, settle that, but I don't tend to believe it. You think you can?
Absolutely. For two things. One, that's a completely arbitrary statement. There's zero proof of any of that. So it's
what about, they Diamond and Silk, right? I don't like them particularly. I mean, I think they're cute and everything. They're funny.
While content is taken off of Facebook.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. My content has never been taken off Facebook. Your content has never been taken off Facebook. Most 99.9% of all conservative content, not that I'm a conservative, not that I want to protect conservative content particularly, is up on Facebook. Once in a while, something goes down. I'm not justifying it. I don't think it's good. It's probably not very good marketing for Facebook. But all right. But let's go all out. So first, there's no evidence to suggest that there's some massive conspiracy to take down specific stuff. We've criticized Zuckerberg, it's still up. We've criticized Facebook, it's still up. Lots of people have all these threads in which people are claiming Zuckerberg is an authoritarian and a totalitarian and a leftist maniac. All those threads are still up. None of them have disappeared. None of them have been taken down. Mm-hmm. So first, there's no evidence that any of that is true. Second, we don't know that much about Zuckerberg.
Well, okay, no, wait. Let me just niggle a little bit, okay? Because again, I'm going to try to play a little devil's advocate, and even the word devils I don't want to use today. I'm really being careful with this. So, there seems to be some pattern about conservative content taken down, and I have a hypothesis about it, right? So it's that the leftists are potentially more active in reporting content, using Facebook's mechanisms for reporting offensive content. Maybe leftists are more active in doing this. Leftists are the ones who are really trying to shut down speech in the culture in general. And Facebook has these mechanisms. You can report it, and then their automatic algorithms will take it down before a human being has had a chance to look at it. So, there's glitches and people are down for a couple days or something, and then they're back up again. It could be also that there's a slight left bias, so that if there is a whole bunch of reporting and human beings actually look at it and they do find it sort of hate speechy, because hate speech is one of the things that Facebook has taken it upon itself to go after. They're a private company.
So let's assume
there's some.
So let's assume everything you're saying is true. So what? So it's still no evidence that there's some grand conspiracy.
Right.
Facebook is targeting an authoritarian state and to delete and suppress all right-wing, whatever you want to call right-wing. I don't even want to consider it right wing, but whatever content is not politically correct, whatever content is not appropriate, whatever content they don't believe is appropriate. There's just no evidence of that. Now, they have a right, and we'll get to this in a minute, right? But they have a right to define hate speech any way they frigging want to. And they have a right to exclude anything that they want to based on that definition of hate speech. That hate speech definition is probably not going to be objective, although a private entity could. I mean, there's certain speech that's unacceptable in my house. There's certain speech that if somebody calls in, I'm going to hang up on them. So there is such a thing as inappropriate speech on any platform, and the owner of the platform gets to decide what that speech is and isn't. But let's go back to this vast conspiracy. So one, it's arbitrary. There's simply no evidence that there's some systematic oppression. There is some oppression, but there's no evidence of a systematic oppression that would lead one to believe that there's a goal here of establishing any kind of theocracy. Two, the little we know of Mark Zuckerberg's political views, he's a mildly left of center person. He is no socialist. He is no authoritarian communist or fascist or Antifa type. He is a mildly left of center. Mildly left of center is still not authoritarian, not any more than mildly right of center is, theocratic. It would be ridiculous to say that David Frum is a theocrat, and it's ridiculous to call Zuckerberg a communist. Yes, he's left of center. Most of the country is left of center. Most of the universe right now is left of center. That doesn't make him. And even as everybody said, oh, but he's for UBI. I mentioned this last time. UBI is a pretty mainstream view that Milton Friedman had, that many people on the right and on the left, and even free marketers, supposed free marketers have. And, that doesn't make you an authoritarian. So that's second point. Third point, I know people who know Zuckerberg. I know people who work at Facebook. I know objectivists who work at Facebook. And if anything, what I hear through the grapevine, I haven't got direct information, hopefully I'll get at Ocon, is that if anything, Facebook is very self-reflective. Facebook is very interested in figuring this out. It's not simple what they're trying to do, to deal with both privacy and what is appropriate language and what is not, what is family friendly and what is not, what is incitement to violence and what is not. These are all really difficult issues that legal philosophers have been challenged with for 100 years, that our Supreme Court has gotten wrong often. And so it's not going to be surprising if Facebook gets wrong on occasion, and if it's slight left bias, or its left bias of its screeners gets the better of it once in a while. None of this is surprising, but the notion that people panic over this, that the end of the world is coming as they complain about it on Facebook, a platform created by specific individuals, by specific owners of the platform. Mm-hmm. It just boggles my mind. I don't get it. You express frustration in the middle of the week, and I tell, but the fact that this is in any way, there's any kind of prevalence among objectivists or among free market people or among people who consider themselves pro-individual rights, it is absurd and ridiculous. You don't like Facebook, don't use it. You don't like Facebook.
Well, that was one of my points, is that every time you're on there reading something, you're helping Facebook succeed.
What about sanction of the victim? If you're really a victim of Facebook, stop sanctioning it.
Yeah. So there's that. So
I don't consider myself a victim. I love Facebook, and therefore I'm on Facebook, proud to be on Facebook. I'm a Facebook supporter. I actually like Mark Zuckerberg. Come on, I want all the hate. Come on, where's the hate?
I feel like I owe Mark Zuckerberg quite a bit.
I'm a globalist, who likes Mark Zuckerberg.
So let's put that aside, because I agree with you there, but let's assume that that's going on, right? So there's some push to do this. We also know that if you're a leftist, that you believe in using whatever government force you can get control of to achieve your aims, your ultimate utopia and everything. So the premise now, we're going to assume, for the sake of argument, is that Facebook is using whatever it can to bring about this utopia, and they are trying to achieve this authoritarian society. We know that in general, leftists are trying to push towards bigger and bigger government that's more pervasive, that controls more and more of our lives. And then the question is, are we then justified, those of us who don't believe in government doing this, in trying to retaliate? I mean, for them, there's no conflict, right? Because they believe that it is right for government to initiate force in order to achieve their ethical ends, their utopian ends. But for us, we think it's wrong for government to initiate force. I mean, at least I'm on the premise. The people that I'm talking to are the ones who philosophically think that the proper government is one that should not initiate force against citizens, that they should use it only in retaliation. And so then the question is, should we, as a way to try to get towards the proper type of society and government, should we advocate for certain measures like the regulation of Facebook that would achieve that, even if that constitutes initiating force?
Yeah.
That's really the question. And then we could talk about the specific argument that I've seen put out there along these lines, which is, someone had dug up this Ayn Rand's essay, Fairness Doctrine for Education, where she talks about maybe having a fairness doctrine in higher education and then applying that by analogy to Facebook. Now, we could take it in whatever order. We could actually just look at that proposal for a fairness doctrine in education in its own right, because higher education is dominated by leftists.
Yeah, what's the end? I mean, so let's take it one step at a time. So
Sure.
First, I find this funny, just something on YouTube. So Bert writes, Facebook is a giant data harvesting site. I don't go there. He's writing on YouTube, which is owned by Google, which is just as big of a giant data harvesting site as anyone else in the world. So I don't know how you get away with that. That's pretty funny. So any place online that is Google or Facebook is a giant data harvesting site, because they make their money through advertising, and the only way and the way they make their money through advertising is by targeting the advertising. And the only way to target the advertising is by knowing a lot about you and your behavior and your habits. And the more they know about you, the more they can target advertising, and therefore the more you'll click on the advertising and the more they'll get paid. So the whole point of the model, both for Facebook and for Google, is to learn a lot about who you are and how you behave. And that's a completely legitimate business model if you agree to it. That goes back to the third-party privacy. All right, so let's go to this question. Look, so this is the question. A few things we have to get straight. One, we have to ask the question, is Facebook a private enterprise? And I think, and I've seen zero evidence to suggest that it is not. It is publicly traded. It is owned by individuals. It is a private corporation, 100% a private corporation. Now, does the government interfere so much in Facebook so that we could deem it like semi-public or semi-private?
Right.
I see zero evidence of that. The network in which everything that Facebook does is done on private networks, private servers. It doesn't get any money from the government. So the government is not subsidizing my use of Facebook. So, you could make a bizarre argument that the telecommunications network is subsidized, but it's not really subsidized. It's heavily regulated. It's heavily controlled. But Facebook, it is about as private a company as you can get.
Mm-hmm.
There is zero justification ever for the government to interfere with the decision-making of a private company that is not violating individual rights. Facebook is not violating anybody's rights. So for objectivists to advocate for the violation of Facebook's rights is worse than it's a travesty. It's immoral. It is absurd. It is nuts. It is crazy. Even if Facebook is lobbying like everybody else lobbies, every company. So if lobbying makes you now susceptible to violation of your rights, then every company in the United States, then it's fine.
Well, you know what the idea is? Like the leftists are lobbying for things that will violate other people's rights. And so in order to not be suckers and not to be defeated and everything else, we have to be willing to use the same tactics. Otherwise, we're just...
Yeah, but that's the end of freedom. That's the end of objectivism. That's the end of individual rights. That's the end of freedom. That's the end. If you're willing to violate rights of a private entity, because which is not sucking up government money, which is not being subsidized, which cannot be deemed in any way public, then I think you're finished. I think when it comes to immigration, kind of Leonard's argument about immigration, they're coming in, so we have to violate their rights in order to protect us. Now, I disagree with that because I don't think it's an emergency like he views, and I certainly don't think Facebook is but even in an emergency, you have to be very, very careful. So if about how you apply measures within an emergency and of all the rights. So you could, so there's an issue of sovereignty and there are borders and there is something to say about the government has a responsibility in terms of who comes in and who doesn't come in. So I'm not one of those, you just walk across the border, so there's something there, but the government has zero responsibility in terms of regulating speech. The government other than protecting it, the government has zero responsibility, not some, in some context, it's expanding their responsibility, has zero power and legitimacy in censoring, in deciding what speech is acceptable or not. And to give it that power is, again, the end of freedom and the end of everything you believe in. And to regulate Facebook in the name of free speech. But what really boggles my mind is, put aside the philosophy, put aside any philosophical argument. Just think about the practical argument here.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So you give the government under Trump the authority to regulate. Let's say Trump is a conservative and he's going to protect conservatives on Facebook. And then, Elizabeth Warren wins the next election. Mm-hmm. And now you've given Elizabeth Warren the ability to regulate Facebook and determine what is hate speech and what is not on Facebook. So just take the practical part of it. Now, it's the same thing.
Right. And this is what I was thinking is like, suppose we are at war. That's the premise, right? And that in a sense, some sort of retaliation in the physical realm is, acceptable, right? Even we could say, okay, philosophy-wise.
The enemy is not Facebook. The enemy is the government.
So don't give the government more power, right? Yeah.
Yes, but why are we giving the government more power if they're the enemy? And why aren't we going to where the leftists are, which is the universities? I mean, if we're at war, which I guess we are, then why are we not trying to fight it? Why are we trying to handcuff Facebook? I just don't get what the logic is. Is Facebook changing the world? Is Facebook bringing about a socialist revolution? Even if they're trying, is that what they're capable of? No, the universities are, the professors are. So, why don't we advocate for the government? The government can fire any professor it wants. The government, maybe we set up a department at the government that decides to, firing squads maybe for professors who are advocating bad ideas. And, that's more legitimate in my view than regulating Facebook, right? I mean, the real enemies at the universities, let's shut down the universities. The real enemy is not Facebook. Facebook's just a platform. You want your voice heard louder on the platform, lobby harder on the platform. There's no evidence yet of systematic, but if there is, get another platform. Let's create another platform. The technology's there. We can create infinite number of platforms. Let's all move to, Mind.com. Right. Mind.com is a different platform. A lot of people keep telling me, you've got to move towards Mind.com. It's a more rational or less leftist platform. Let's all move there. The idea that we can't, or that Facebook is the one that's changing the world. Now, even Facebook, right? There's Twitter, there's YouTube. Mm-hmm. Is there a conspiracy between Google and Facebook and Twitter to bring about a leftist dictatorship in America? I mean, come on, people. I mean, that's just absurd and ridiculous. So
Well, and aren't those people who are running those companies capable of learning that that's not what they want, and hopefully before it's too late as well. So,
they have free will, and you have no right to use force against them because you disagree with their ideas. I mean, and if you think it's time for a revolution, then fine. As I said on some other shows, let's stop planning breaking into the government armories and stealing tanks and bazookas and rocket launch grenades or whatever. Let's do a revolution. Stop thinking that you will bring a revolution by giving the government more power over the one thing that they should avoid having any power over, which is ideas. Let me read you one sentence, right?
Sure.
One sentence from this essay that everybody is quoting, right? And this is, the government has no right to set itself up as the arbiter of ideas. The government has no right to set itself up as the arbiter of ideas. Mm-hmm. So, by the way, this would exclude, what do you call it?
Ideological screening, yeah.
And this certainly would exclude the idea that Facebook is too leftist and the government should determine it too leftist and therefore regulate it. The idea that the government would do that, or that we trust even the courts to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it would do it. It's going to be a quote fairness doctrine or something. Equivalent for Facebook. That's what it would be.
This is where I might disagree with Ayn Rand. So Ayn Rand implies a certain agreement with the fairness doctrine that existed in the airwaves in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, where there was this regulation that said you have to give fair and balanced different views on television on important issues that are controversial issues. And of course, she makes the point in her article that it's impossible to implement. It's a ridiculous law because it's impossible to implement it, and it's all based on a false assumption, which is that the airwaves are public. But that once the airwave public, you have this regulation in order to prevent airwaves from becoming totally left-wing vehicles. Now, what I find interesting historically is that when the fairness doctrine was eliminated, and I think that was under Reagan in the 1980s, the fairness doctrine was eliminated. In what happened? Well, what happened when it was eliminated is the rise of right-wing media. Mm-hmm. That is, what is interesting is that what happened after the fairness doctrine went away was Rush Limbaugh. And think about if Rush Limbaugh had come about during the fairness doctrine, then Rush Limbaugh would have been forced to give equal time on his network, which was a right-wing network, which is a conservative network, being forced to give liberals, but nobody wanted to listen to left-wing radio, because they tried, Air American, they tried a few attempts and nobody wanted to listen to them. So basically what happened was that conservative radio, to this day, I think, conservative radio dominates. I mean, it has something like 80% of the market share of all talk radio is conservative radio. Mm-hmm. So the fairness document, I mean, it did, by the logic of the people wanting to sue Facebook, they should sue radio. And the left should legitimately sue radio, and they've tried. Luckily, they haven't been able to re-implement the fairness doctrine on radio, but they've tried because they're shut out, and it's all right-wing radio, and the left is pissed off because it's all right-wing radio. By the way, those of you doing the super chat and have asked questions with dollars associated with them, I will get to it. I promise. I'm hoping it doesn't scroll all the way down, but I will get to them. But let Amy and me just finish this trail of thought. So with the elimination of fairness doctrine, you got the rise of talk radio, which to this day dominates talk radio, right? It dominates radio. And then you also got the rise of Fox News in the early 1990s. Also, once the fairness doctrine was eliminated, now you could have CNN clearly left, Fox clearly right, people struggling, maybe CNN's trying to pretend it's in the middle, and then MSNBC is way to the left. But you got a whole variety. And then under the elimination of the fairness doctrine, because who knows what the internet would look like if you still had a fairness doctrine, you got the internet, which now gives ability to present any view anywhere, anytime. And yes, maybe you won't be able to use Facebook as a platform because they'll ban you, but you could set up your own websites, and unless you're some Nazi calling for the elimination of all Jews, they're not taking down every single website that they don't like. There are plenty of websites out there with plenty of a variety points of view from wacky left or wacky right or wacky middle. So this is, I guess my point is this: since the elimination of the fairness doctrine, there is more variety of news and opinion and media than ever in human history. There is more opportunities to express yourself than ever in human history. There's more opportunities to get your ideas out there, to have debates, discussions, disagreements than ever in human history. All you people who complain about, oh my God, Facebook has a monopoly over what? Over what? Right? A monopoly over communication? No, we can communicate through Zoom, as Amy and I are doing right now. We can communicate on Twitter. We can communicate on YouTube. We can communicate on mind.com. We can communicate on 20 other different platforms. Facebook happens to be the biggest because it happens to be the best. What is it that is it the provider of news? Well, no, I can subscribe to the New York Times. I can subscribe to, I can even subscribe to, what's his name? The crazy nut on the right.
Alex Jones or whatever.
I can subscribe to Alex Jones. I can subscribe to Bytebot. I have more sources of information, true, false, left, right, center, from the moon than I ever have in human history. So what is it a monopoly of? Only Facebook has Facebook and has the particular styling of a Facebook. Yeah, but that's the nature of business. The nature of business is to achieve differentiation, to make yourself different from anybody else. And a successful business is very big. So this is to answer the Lisp monkey. Do you think economics of natural monopolies is valid? No. Is Facebook a natural monopoly of the Sexual 101? No. Even so, is government intervention needed? No. No, 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 no. There is no such thing as a monopoly even in a semi-free market, unless the government enforces it. Government is not enforcing the market share Facebook has, and it's not clear. Facebook's market share of communication between individuals is very, very small. Facebook's market share of delivering news to people is very, very small. So there is no monopoly, even by the definitions of classical economists of monopolies. There's no monopoly. So the whole thing is just, all right. Sorry, Amy, I went off there.
No worries about that. So let me see if I can get some of the other thoughts about this. Okay, so how about this one? Suppose you do think that there is this issue of Facebook unfairly discriminating against certain viewpoints. And, Facebook just published, or maybe they just revised probably and, expanded their community standards. And I went through it and skimmed it, and I didn't have any particular problem. I think Facebook is taking on a huge, sort of responsibility by saying that they want to try to control hate speech. Hate speech is constitutionally protected. Nonetheless, a private platform can go ahead and regulate it if they want. That's no problem. But suppose you think
they can define it any way they want, in my view.
Yeah. Suppose you think that you have an argument that Facebook is violating, or, it's being fraudulent. They tell you their community standards are this, and then the way that they actually implement it is XYZ. And so you could sue them, and then you could achieve getting your content.
Yeah, you could sue them as a violation of contract. What you cannot do is sue them under the First Amendment, right? So the First Amendment is irrelevant here. What you can sue them as is a breach of contract. They promised X standards, I don't know if you can sue for ambiguity. I think if it's an ambiguous contract, just don't trade with somebody. I would never trade with somebody if the contract was ambiguous and if it was important to me. I'm not worried about Facebook. If Facebook wants to ban all my content, then Facebook will ban all my content, and I'll move.
Would you sue? Would you sue? No. I mean, you've invested a lot in Facebook, right? Getting your audience out there.
No, I wouldn't sue. They have every right to ban my content. I didn't establish my content based on some assumption.
I mean, what if you had an arguable case, that they banned your content and there was potentially a violation of their own published community standards in the way that they did it, and you've invested. Okay. So
too much of it. If and I wouldn't, again, Prager suing under the First Amendment, so I think that's wrong. So it may be if you could do some class action suit of people who were dumped and said it was ambiguous, and we could then maybe, but it's just not worth it. Look, I've said this many, many times. I think what Facebook is trying to do is legitimate. I think it is legitimate for them to define hate speech. Okay. If I were running Facebook, I would not want certain content on my platform. For example, I wouldn't want pornography on my platform. I wouldn't want snuff videos on my platform. I wouldn't want beheadings of ISIS on my platform. There's certain standards that I would want, and then I wouldn't want Nazis on my platform. If I had a platform, I would not have Nazis. I wouldn't want defenders of Stalin on my platform. If for those of you who think I'm biased against the right, so there's certain groups I wouldn't want on my platform. Now, how do I define that objectively, and how do I convey that objectively? Is hard. So, and it's hard, particularly given that they're not objectivists and they're not rigorous thinkers. It's hard. So I am a huge admirer of what they're trying to do. It's the same. Well, we've talked about privacy. I think it's a first of all, the laws are screwed up because of the third-party doctrine. But beyond that, it's a hard issue. How do you deal with privacy? Who do you release the information to? What does it mean to have an app on Facebook? What kind of contractual relationship do you have with the app holders and restrict them from giving it to Cambridge Analytics? Right. So all of that is tricky. And what kind of agreement do you have with the users in terms of how you're going to use them? And are the users reading the document? I mean, that's the other thing. The fact is, I've never read the policy. So I would never sue a company for violating a contract that I did not read.
There's that too, right? Yeah.
I mean, that's immoral, in my view. If I didn't read it, then anything they do to me is I'm screwed, right?
Well, okay. I'll give you one example where maybe you might. So you go and you valet park your car, and they give you the little ticket, and on the ticket, there's the little tiny boilerplate contract. This contract limits our liability. Read it, blah, blah, blah. You don't read that. You go have dinner. And you come out and they've taken your car hot rodding around the neighborhood and whatever, right? You get it. So they have violated that contract. You didn't read the contract. You might sue them if they damaged your car.
Sure. But then
okay. So it has to be pretty egregious. It has to be egregious
because it's a repeatable contract. You don't every time you valet have to read the contract. That's what standardized contracts are for. But yeah, I mean, I think people have to take some responsibility over it in terms of
it would have to be a really egregious thing.
I don't want to use Facebook because the contract's not to my liking. It's not objective enough. Don't use it, right? But most of us don't read it. And then when they take some of our content off, we go, oh, wait a minute. I'm pissed off now. Well, but you didn't even read the contract. Maybe the contract said they could take the content off at their discretion.
Yeah.
I just don't get it. And then this argument about monopoly is just it's so anti-free market, so anti-objectivism. So let's go back to this essay by Ayn Rand.
Because that's where the interesting question comes up, right? Because if she was proposing the fairness doctrine for education, the fairness doctrine for the airwaves doesn't make sense because it's not really public, and we're glad that went away. But what about a fairness doctrine for education where pretty much every university, all higher education, there's a couple exceptions, they're federally funded, they're federally subsidized. So basically we have federally subsidized leftism out there. What about a fairness doctrine for education?
So that's what she's arguing. Now notice that even there, she says, we don't want the executive branch to do it. So she's not arguing for regulation. She's arguing for lawsuits based on the fairness doctrine. She's arguing that individual citizens should sue their universities, and that a movement should arise that sues the universities based on the existence of the fairness doctrine. Now, the fairness doctrine is gone. So there's no basis for even to do this. This is part of the reason why I said, I don't think she would argue. And she says explicitly, she does not want the executive branch involved. She does not want government, the Congress or the executive to be involved because she views them as more corrupt. She wants citizens to sue and then to monitor the universities. And when the universities are not fair, to sue them in courts and for the courts to apply this, which is very different, right? Now, you can't do this today because there's no fairness doctrine. Good. And I think she would support the non-existence of the fairness doctrine, particularly given the outcome, which has resulted in much more diversity of a speech than I think she imagined. I think she still thought that this couldn't, that it wasn't clear that given the government control of the airwaves that this diversity of view would happen. But I don't know. I'd have to read. I think she's written about this elsewhere. But look, she says. But then so that's one. There's no fairness doctrine. Second, it's universities which are funded, and she continuously says this would not apply to truly. So, for example, this would not apply to Hillsdale College, which does not get money from the government, does not take student loans from the government, that does not abide by what do you call it, Act 9,
Title 9 or something.
It doesn't do any of that because it's not regulated by the government. So she would say it doesn't apply to them. It only applies to universities that are semi-private, either public or semi-public, right? And so I don't understand how this is relevant to Facebook, right? Facebook, again, this is why I started up by saying Facebook is a private company, right? Now, would I apply this to universities? I would not, only because I think the government would get involved. Once the courts made a decision, I think the executive branch would get involved. I think the world is much worse today in the sense of the power of government and the scope of government than it was even in 73 when she wrote this, although it's striking, I underlined here, but I didn't, it's striking to me how bad she thought things were in 73. And maybe things are better today than they were in 73. And maybe all these people freaking out because the left is winning are now realizing the fact that that things are just as bad, were just as bad in 73 and maybe worse then than they are today. Maybe we're a little better off today. And here's a quote, for example, and I found this so stunning because I remember complaining about exactly this as a new phenomena, right? And she says, a distinguished Ivy League university, a dean of the School of Business recently suggested that it be renamed the School of Management, explaining that profit-making is unpopular with students, and that most of them want to work for nonprofit institutions such as government or charities. Now, what's stunning about that statement is, over the last 10 years, the argument again about millennials has been that they're not interested in working for profit institutions like their parents were, that they want to go and work for government or charities. So it seems to me that what's happened is that we've gone through a cycle. Yeah. In 73, everybody, profit was bad. And then the 80s, there was the baby boom generation. It was all about making money. It was all about the me generation. It wasn't true self-interest, but it was a sudden positive element. And, they were about money and they were about profit and then over the last 10 years or so, we've got the millennials coming about and they're back to the 60s and 70s, profit is bad and so on. So maybe things are not as bad as they seem today if we put them in the perspective of how bad they were in 1973 and in the 1960s. So that is a section that struck me from this essay. But she keeps saying, if the public allegedly owns universities, as it allegedly, and she keeps putting allegedly, owns the airwaves, then for all the same reasons, but the reasons are gone because the airwaves, we basically done away with it. Same reasons, no specific ideology can be permitted to hold a monopoly in any department of any public or semi-public university. Facebook is private, it's not semi-public. Right. So the idea to use this essay to justify regulating Facebook is to not read the essay.
Yeah, I'm not even sure that I would, like you were saying too, I'm not even sure I'd want a fairness doctrine in education, but I certainly wouldn't think you could apply it over to Facebook, which is not even what, semi-public. By semi-public, she meant the fact that it was accepting federal funds through student loans and all that stuff.
This is the impossibility of the situation in which we exist, right? So let's say you're a devout Christian who believes the planet is 7,000 years old and evolution is a myth and everything like that. It's completely legitimate for you to sue your public school district for teaching evolution. You don't want them to teach evolution. She goes into a whole thing here, how it's immoral to force a parent to have their child taught something the parent doesn't believe in and advocates explicitly against. But that's the problem when you publicly fund things. There's no right answer. It's wrong to teach creationism, but it's wrong to teach evolution. It's wrong to teach them both. What do? There's no answer, right? So the fairness doctrine doesn't solve that, because what are you going to do now? In science classes, you're going to teach evolution and creationism, or creationism not a science. You teach that, and it's a mess. So that's why it's impossible. The only thing to be advocated for as objectivists, in my view, is privatizing education and allowing people to set up their religious schools, allowing people to set up their evolution schools, whatever, right? Science schools. So
Jordan Peterson,
you can advocate for.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson is talking about starting some online university and everything else, try to work around and set up something that competes with it. Obviously, when it's government entrenched, it's even harder. But we need to be advocating for getting government controls away, not adding controls, is sort of my view. There's two different things. I mean, one is to just bring out explicitly more. Atlas Shrugged is called Atlas Shrugged, right? So if you actually think that you're at a place where the potentials are revolution, or, basically it's the leftists are going to take control of us, there is the shrug option as well. It's not like you have to take up arms or any of the other stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, John Galt is on the torture machine, and they want him to run the economy. They're willing to make him dictator of the economy, right? And he says no, because he won't, you won't help them. And the idea that we should not just not help them, but we should actually go in there and help them be more, regulate more, help them control the economy more, is just ludicrous. It's again, it's immoral. It's defeatist. It's giving up. It's not a revolution. It's not retaliation. Again, you want to retaliate? Let's start a revolution. Atlas Revolts is much more real than Atlas lobby. Atlas would never lobby. Atlas lobbying is Atlas is Reardon becoming Orrin Boyle. That's what we want. We want Reardon to become Orrin Boyle.
I would say certain kind of lawsuits are in that category too. By the way, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, Yaron. In the program notes over at my blog at don'tletitgo.com, I put an American Enterprise Institute symposium link there, where there's a number of different policy experts talking about the existing state of the law with respect to a platform like Facebook. And it asked the question, should we want to have more regulation over it? And as I understand it, the whole reason that we get to enjoy the wonder of Facebook and all these other platforms right now, and the thing that's in danger right now, is this freedom that was set up in this law. So the law has essentially been that as long as all they're doing is setting up a platform for users to publish, then the platform itself is not liable like, a newspaper like New York Times or whatever. And so the argument that I hear being made is that once they start curating the content, Facebook decides they're going to take this down because it's, violates their hate speech standards, or they're going to show you a news feed based on how they conceive your interest, which of course has their own biases in it a little bit or whatever, right? Once they do this, then somehow they should be held liable in court the same way that the New York Times is, for example.
The New York Times is liable for what? For libel laws and for...
Yeah. Just as if they're writing or publishing or editing the stuff. And to me, there's this distinction between curating and editing.
The New York Times is not curating. The New York Times is presenting the news. What did they used to call themselves? The New York Times was...
All the news is fit to print.
All the news is fit to print. They are presenting the news. So no, I don't think Facebook or any of these guys are liable. But again, that's under libel laws and under what would be the other law? But even the New York Times, you can't sue the New York Times for not reporting on something you think should have been reported on. But that's what
there's that too,
Facebook, right? For not including certain news or not including certain things, for curating in a particular way, they want to be able to sue them for that, and that's just.
Well, I think maybe it's just, okay, well, if you're curating, we're going to treat you like a publisher, and then start holding Facebook liable for the content that it's the users actually putting up there. Because, you know, to me, there is this very big difference between the New York Times, you know, publishes an op-ed, even say it's, you know, from a contributor, they've edited it.
And they've chosen the contributor. They've chosen,
yeah,
their company chose the contributor. Their company hired the reporters. They are the entity producing the news.
The content. Yeah.
Facebook is not producing content. So no, I think I think it's ridiculous. All right, we've got one other like paid question. What about the so-called network effect that exists? So the idea that online monopoly is different because there's a network effect. Because people, there's a huge value to the network. Yeah, the network effect exists. There's no question. It's a massive benefit. It's why we all love Facebook so much, because there's a massive network effect. That doesn't make it a monopoly by any standard. It just makes it a very, very powerful, very, very effective, and very, very worthwhile and valuable platform. The network effect does. The network effect is what Microsoft had, and it made it incredibly valuable. A corporation, and made it an incredibly valuable piece of software because everybody used Word and everybody was using the same thing, and you didn't have to convert. I still remember the days of converting from one word processor to another word processor, reformatting everything. There's a massive benefit to the network effect. The network effect doesn't turn something into a monopoly. Again, a monopoly, true monopoly, can only be enforced with force. And as long as there's no government force available, then it's not a monopoly, and the government has no business regulating it. Even if 100% of all human beings on the planet used Facebook, and there were truly no alternative to Facebook in existence at that point in time, but there were no barriers to entry and there was no force being used, it still would not be, in my mind, a monopoly. And of course, that would never exist because not 100% of people are not going to use one platform constantly. It just doesn't happen. So, you know, you gotta, you know, I just don't, monopolies don't exist. Get over it. The government has no role in the economy, period. No role in the economy and no role in ideas. So a proper objectivist constitution would have a separation of economics from state and a separation of ideas from state. And that would preclude any kind of involvement in the government, for example, in anything that Facebook is doing.
So no lobbying, even in retaliation, out. And we should.
What are you retaliating against?
The leftists who are using the mechanisms of government, whatever they can get at.
The mechanisms of free speech to attack the leftists. I mean, what are you retaliating? And unless you're in a revolution, drop the bullshit of retaliation. If you're in a revolution, then you shoot them. Then it's not a matter of retaliating. It's a matter of armed revolution, and you're going out there and you're fighting. And it's armed force, and then it's explicit. It's force against force. But if you're not in a revolution, you have no right to use force. Get over it and start doing what's really necessary to change the world, which is use your mind and use your speech and use your Facebook and use your Twitter and use your YouTube. And by the way, you can. Nobody's actually stopping you, all you people, from using Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. And when they do, start complaining. But I haven't seen any objectivist and anybody who I know who has completely been dropped. Even Jordan Peterson was dropped and then returned. And even my stuff, some of it is, demonetized on YouTube. And it's not ideological. It's anytime I talk about war, anytime I talk about, it's ideological, but it's more about foreign policy and stuff like that. They're not censoring me on free speech. They're not censoring me on a bunch of other stuff.
And if you appeal, don't they bring it back typically?
Sometimes, usually they do, but there's still some of my videos are demonetized. I have no right to YouTube's capacity to generate advertising for my videos.
Right.
When they monetize the videos, I say, thank you, YouTube.
Yes.
When they don't monetize my video, I go, oh, whoops, sorry. It would be nice if you'd monetize them, but it's too bad you can't. I could take those videos and I could go out and I could hire somebody to find people willing to advertise on my show. And I could include advertisements, my only produced advertisements on my show, and YouTube couldn't do anything. It wouldn't do anything about that. So I could still monetize my shows. I just can't expect YouTube to do it for me for free and then complain about it. It's just, I'm frustrated.
I had forgotten sort of that angle of it as well. But from what I've seen, for instance, Dave Rubin will have little glitches where he's demonetized, and then he'll appeal, and it'll be back
Sometimes
again.
they don't, and it's horrible because there's stuff on the left that's far more objectively hate speech. But the fact is that advertisers are biased. So my guess is that most of the advertisers on YouTube are leftists, as compared to advertisers who are right wing. Look at what all the advertisers who banned, what's her name, the right wing woman who Ingram, I think, because of the gun rights. So you're going to tell me now that at gunpoint we should force the advertisers to continue to advertise on her show because they're exhibiting leftist bias, and in retaliation, we should have advertising regulations in this country that forces leftist companies to advertise on right-wing radio and television. I mean, that's where they're heading. That's the logic. I don't understand what the difference is.
Okay. Yeah. Now, I don't know if you want to go on to a different topic. Have we pretty much killed this topic? We have some questions that we need to.
No, I don't see. Nobody's putting their money where their mouth is.
Okay. So we're ready. We've got a couple things. One is I just wanted to get your sense of the latest developments in North Korea. North Korea, South Korea are talking. Do you have any hope for that? Do you think it means that Trump is having a positive effect on the whole North Korea situation?
Absolutely. Same positive effect. I think it was Jimmy Carter had, Clinton had, Bush had. I mean, this is the fourth time, at least in the last 20 or 30 years, that North Korea and South Korea are talking. It's the fourth time that everybody's very hopeful. It's the fourth time they've promised not to develop nuclear weapons or dismantle what they have or to denucleify or whatever. Every single time the American president gets suckered in and believes it and reduces the sanctions and everything's hunky-dory until it turns out, shockingly and surprisingly and unbelievably, that the North Koreans lied and they cheated. I wouldn't be surprised if, like on YouTube right now, many people are going to advocate for Trump to get a Nobel Peace Prize. If Trump was a Democrat, he would get a Nobel Peace Prize. And if Trump was a Democrat, I would guarantee that if this happened at Obama, every single one of the people that I know who are on my chats, who are now raving about Trump's negotiating ability and how wonderful it is, and look, would be hammering Obama for being a traitor and a sell-off, and you can't negotiate with evil and everything, but Trump does it. Oh, then it must be okay. Then it's okay to negotiate with evil. Then the North Korean are not lying. They're not bluffing this time because it's Donald Trump, and Donald Trump cannot do anything wrong. So no, I don't buy any of this. This is North Korea fooling the West. This is the same game that evil always plays with the good. It plays with it. Hitler did this to Chamberlain. You could probably go back to ancient times. This was happening. You can go throughout history. I think John Lewis, in one of his books on the history of war, gives lots of examples of this. You cannot negotiate with evil. No negotiation with evil ever works. I remember people telling me, "Look, we got an Oslo agreement with Yasser Arafat, and look how wonderful it is." Rabin and Yasser Arafat are shaking hands in front of the White House, and Arafat is going to come back, and there's going to be peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. How many times have we heard this? And again, this is the shocking thing. The shocking thing is that all these people who are on Facebook and on YouTube and all these places who are supporting Trump right now would have been horrified by exactly the same sequence of events if any other president had done it. So the bias that people are exhibiting, the blindness, you don't negotiate with evil. That's a principle. I don't care if it's a Democrat. I don't care if it's a Republican. You don't negotiate with somebody who's threatened nuclear annihilation. So
now he has Bolton there. Do you think that there's some hope that he's not going to get completely boondoggled because Bolton has some sense to him?
Yeah, but I wonder, this is the thing about Bolton and other neocons and other foreign policy experts. They are often very good in the opposition. But Bolton was quite influential into the Bush thing, and he supported a lot of what Bush did, which was crap. You know, Bolton was better because I think Bolton was better during the Bush years because he left administration at some point. So he was better outside the administration than inside the administration. So I think all of these guys, so, I mean, this is the thing. You can say, for example, I'm against the treaty with Iran. I really think the US should get out of the treaty with Iran. But if you were advising the president of the United States right now, would you say, wipe him out, bomb the spiritual center of Iran, bomb the leadership into oblivion, destroy every single nuclear anything that Iran has, give them, as I used to say in my talks, the infrastructure their philosophy deserves, which means, you know, dark ages, right? Would you, how many people on the planet Earth sitting in that chair with the nuclear codes, responsible for the life or death of millions of people, knowing that the entire world would condemn them, that history might condemn them, that the American people would condemn them? How many people would actually give that advice to the president of the United States? 2, 3, maybe me, Leonard, I don't know, but very few people.
I wouldn't enjoy it, but I'd do it probably, yeah.
Would John Bolton? No. I mean, he'll say it on the outside, but would he actually give that advice? No. So I think what happens when you're in the office is you moderate. I mean, I've always said Republicans are really good opposition. I mean, not really good, but they're a decent opposition party. But they're terrible when they get into power. And my guess is that Bolton was a very good opposition intellectual. And even there, we know he was bad.
Well, and here's one other thing, right? In Iran, North Korea, probably, so similar in this regard. We have made so many foreign policy blunders in the past.
Yep. Yeah.
And so, whereas if we hadn't made all of these blunders, you could say, okay, it's a proper war, we're at risk and they are the aggressors. And so, per the essays that you've written in the past on this foreign policy issue, we are justified in using whatever force is necessary to eliminate the risk, and the collateral damage is the responsibility of the aggressors, et cetera. However, if we have done all sorts of things that have made it the situation, so for instance, in South Korea, right? If we go and we blow up everything in North Korea, there's a huge collateral damage of South Korea, which is completely innocent. Well, and part of it is our fault, right?
I did a whole show on what to do about North Korea.
Yeah.
How militarily you could approach it and how military you could think about it. You can go back and find it.
Sure.
I don't want to, the ways I think with the American firepower to minimize casualties in South Korea, but it would have to be a very sophisticated, very clever attack. I don't believe there's anybody in the American military today who could pull it off. I just don't think they're built in that way. If you had Patton and Sherman and what's his name, MacArthur, then I would trust them completely. But the generals we have today, I do not trust. But yes, I agree with you completely. The problem here is all the bad policies of the past, all the compromises, all the sellouts in the past that created an impossible situation, right? That List Monkey is asking, if North Korea denuclearized, would it be wise to take them out? Even if they denuclearized, consider how backward they are theoretically. Yeah, I mean, I don't view taking out North Korea as a big deal. I don't think North Korea is going to launch missiles against the United States. I don't view North Korea as a threat to the United States. I think what we should do is every time they launch a missile, we should knock it out of the air. We should make it clear to them that we have the missile defense system that can protect us. We should isolate them. We should embargo them. We should cut them off completely from all civilization and let them crumble from within. They're not a suicidal regime like Iran. I think philosophy matters. They're more like mutually assured destruction, and therefore they won't do it because they don't want to die. Whereas Iran, they don't mind dying. They uphold this suicidal religion. So let me just say thank you, Herb. Thank you, List Monkey. Thank you. I've missed out on a few. Thank you, Herb. Yeah, there's another Herb. Thank you, Steve. So for all the questions and for all the support on this is really good. So if they denuclearized, I would just leave them alone. I mean, I've said many times that I think what should happen in South Korea is that the United States should get out of there. I think the United States should tell South Korea that over the next 5 years, we are withdrawing. You should arm yourself. South Korea is a rich enough country, they can protect itself. I think the United States should leave NATO. I think Germany is rich enough to defend Europe if it wants to. I don't think the United States should be defending Europe. I think we should get out of NATO. I don't think an American kid should die to defend Estonia. My friends in Georgia, when I was in Tbilisi, were not happy with me when I said this because they rely on American protection, and I understand that. But the fact is that it's not the job of America to be the policeman of the world. It's not. Its job is to protect the individual rights of Americans. We need a Navy to protect the shipping lanes. We need the Navy to protect us from pirates and from a possible blockade of the shipping lanes by Chinese or somebody else. We need a military force to protect our homeland. But in terms of fighting a war on European soil, I'm against it. Germans are a rich country. Russia is no threat to Germany if Germany armed itself. So why would America have to protect that? Somebody says I should react to John Oliver's show on the Iran deal. I watched the show and I figured I'm trying to think how to do it because, half the time he's being funny and the fact is some of the stuff he says is funny. The facts he's saying, well, I'll try to do something on John Oliver's show on the Iran deal. But it's hard. It's harder with humor. If it was if it was a serious 5-minute presentation, it would be easier. By the way, if you guys want to send me videos that you want me to react to, then send them to me. Yaron at yaronbookshow.com. Just send me a link to a video, like if there's a Jordan Peterson video, particularly short ones, like 5 to 10 minute ones that I can then speak over them, pause them, and react to them. I think the ones I did of Robert Reich and Ben Shapiro were very well received. So if you see a video that you think I should react to, just send it to me, forward it to me, and I will. John Oliver is difficult. Humor is difficult because you don't deal with humor in the same way you deal with serious arguments. And I sometimes find John Oliver legitimately funny, even if I disagree with him. So don't send me other objectivists' videos to react to. Do not send me Raka Ali videos to react to. I'm not interested in responding to other objectivists. I'm interested in responding to the culture out there. Let's stop gazing at ourselves and focus on issues that are really relevant. Okay, we got another question, Amy.
Okay.
Hi from Belfast. Hey,
Hello.
Belfast. Rory. I don't know how you pronounce your name. Sorry, Rory, I guess. I can't connect objectivism with using nukes on a country with innocent people being considered as collateral. Seems like collectivism when we consider them the enemy. You're not considering them the enemy. You're considering the regime the enemy, and they are some of them. Now, we can talk about who is innocent and who is not, but some of them, said clearly the children and some people are innocent. They are the victims of their own government. If their own government is a threat to the United States, use nukes to destroy the threat. And if people die because you're doing that, it is the fault of the people who initiated the threat against you. So it is the responsibility of the, let's say, Iranian government to protect the individual rights of the Iranian people. If the Iranian government launches a war against the United States, some Iranians, innocent children, are going to die. The responsibility for their death, morally and in every other sense, is on the Iranian government, the government that launched the military attack. So it's not collectivistic to defend yourself. If somebody is running at you shooting, and the only way to defend yourself is to use a machine gun, and a bunch of innocent bystanders die, tough. And the fact is that their death is not your fault. The death is the fault of the guy running towards you with a gun trying to shoot you. What you do in self-defense is the responsibility of whoever initiated force. You can find, I've written extensively on this, and Leonard has spoken extensively on it, Leonard Peikoff. I've written extensively on it in Winning the Unwinnable War, that was edited by Lance Juno. Anybody interested in these issues of the morality of war should get that book. Also, John Lewis has a number of books on this issue. Look up John Lewis, a historian. And then Leonard Peikoff has a number of talks, Americans versus America, important distinction, which is I think on YouTube, available on YouTube. So there's a lot of objectivist content about the morality of war and the relationship with so-called collateral damage.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ori, for the support. Thank you, Jay, for the support. Amy, take it away. What else?
Yeah. So here's the interesting case. They have caught a serial killer / rapist in California. This case had gone cold. And what they did is this: they took some DNA that they had collected and saved all these years from one of the crime sites, and they submitted it to one of these genealogy websites. And so I guess there's these number of these websites. Let me see if I can find it really quick. It really doesn't matter which one it is.
Right? One of these things, yeah.
The GED match or whatever is what it's called. Okay, so they submit this, and it's law enforcement. So they set up a fake profile. They submit the DNA from the crime scene, and then they wait. And I guess what happens through these sites is that other people who are interested in their genealogy, they submit their DNA, and then they end up being matched and get in touch. So some distant relatives of this serial killer dude. So he didn't submit his own DNA. The police submit the DNA using a phony profile. And then when distant relatives of this guy are searching for their long lost relatives through this site, they get hooked up. And so then the law enforcement conducts an investigation and questions people and uses genealogy experts. And then they track down the actual killer guy. And then now they've apprehended him. So this is a really interesting thing, right? Because you've got this whole, first of all, it's not necessarily third-party doctrine with respect to this guy, because this guy never submitted his own data.
Law enforcement was in its, I think, rights to submit the DNA. Now the question is, under what terms? So the other people submit their DNA, and they actively are pursuing other people to match up, right?
Right, but they're not trying to help law enforcement.
Wow. Okay.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So but you know, again, third-party doctrine would say if you submit this information to GED match for one purpose, which is finding your long lost relatives, therefore the government is entitled to use that information without a warrant.
Yes, I think a warrant is what's missing here.
Well, right, a warrant is missing, but the third-party doctrine would say there's no warrant needed. Now, there is some question because even the owner of GED match apparently didn't know about this because it was a phony profile and the blah, 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 right? But the third-party doctrine would say you don't need a warrant, and then there's some maybe existing legislation that would say you need a subpoena based on some lower standard or whatever it is.
So we reject the third-party doctrine. So what do we say about a case like this? So once you submit to GED, I think the government would have to have a warrant towards GED, towards the genetics company. They should know this is happening.
But could you even have a validly drawn warrant of this type? Do you see what I mean? Because really what it is they just want to search the entire GED match database just in case something comes up. They don't have any particularized suspicion that there's going to be a match to their criminal, say, in this database. Yeah, potentially. And
could they submit it, and then when there was a match, have the warrant basically affect what you do with the match? Allow them to use the match for further investigation. Is there some kind of legal thing that you can do?
But I mean, he even looking for matches, right, in this huge database. When you submit your genetic information to GED match, you're not trying to help the police get one of your relatives or whatever. And this guy is a particularly evil scumbag, really disgusting murders and rapes and whatever. So it's the kind of case where you say, God, I want this guy to rot in hell. And so you would be very sympathetic to this guy being caught in this manner. It's like the case was cold. They couldn't find him. And look, well, they found him. Isn't this wonderful? But if you think about the way that they got him, there are some real issues. I'm not telling you I've got the answer here, but I think there are real questions.
Because I think it's really interesting, and it's going to become more and more of an interesting as people make public more, or not make public, but put onto these services more and more of their genome and
Yes.
their medical databases and all kinds of databases. And can the government, without any cause, search those databases? Can it say to doctors, look, you've got this 10 million person database of genes because you're running this big study. We want to use it because we were looking for this crook.
Yeah, and they do the same thing. Like they'll say, okay, well, who is searching for X on Google within this 50,000, resident town or whatever, and 50,000 people is not particularized, so there's this whole, yeah, I give my information to Google as to what I'm searching for, but that doesn't mean that I'm therefore consenting for it to be turned over to somebody else for this other purpose. Why doesn't government just get a warrant for this stuff? Now, then they say, okay, well, they couldn't have gotten a warrant. They could not have gotten a warrant for this, right?
I don't know.
And then we're going to let these guys go.
Legal issues that I think would come up in a free society. That this is why you need a legislature. This is why you need a court system.
Yeah.
This is why you can't have anarchy, because you actually need people to think this through and figure it out. And the answer is not obvious, and it might be wrong. So you need to exercise it. You need the Supreme Court. You need to challenge it. You need to take it, match it up against the Constitution. You need to really figure these things out carefully.
Yeah, I've got to think about it more. But for me, I would say, as much as you really would like this guy to rot or be fried or whatever, for me, I'm not necessarily set on the death penalty all the time. And with Ayn Rand's caveats, I agree with her on that. But yeah, this is a perfectly posed case to entrench the third party doctrine in this whole realm of genetic data, because it's exactly the kind of guy that you want to have fry. And, it's this.
Yeah, and it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe a court would go against this because of the type of criminal he is, and because it's not obvious it's not obvious how anybody's rights were infringed, anybody suffered or anything. And because the third party doctrine exists, they can just roll this under the third party doctrine. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see what the court says in Carpenter and if that can somehow then be related to this. But this is a rather unique scenario. That doctrine for so many people just seems arcane and they don't want to understand it. And so then my challenge in my book is to make people be motivated to get a handle on it and realize that we need to eliminate it. So yeah, that's what I have, Yaron.
Well, that's good. I mean, we're at an hour 15, which is a good time. I don't have, if anybody has like a super chat question, we could do that. I don't see anything we haven't answered. We seem to have answered everything.
There's a couple questions, and one is going to be if you have one of your philosophers on again.
Yeah.
So just kind of bookmark it. And maybe we'll leave the two, just give you food for thought. One is when we talk about a cultural war, that language of war, is that fueling the willingness to go for the kind of argument that says, let's retaliate by means of lobbying and, we have to use the same tactics the leftists use, otherwise we're suckers and we're going to lose, and all that kind of thought. So there's that the language of a cultural war, does it feed into that? Because we don't believe in initiating force. And
yeah, but the argument is that force is being initiated against us, so we're doing it
in retaliation,
self-defense, right? As an act of self-defense. But not as long as you believe you're still living in a civilized place. And if you believe we're not in a civilized place, then it's time for a revolution. So again, I think the two options are simple. One, revolution. Second, fight the ideological fight, right? And I don't know what words to use. All the words we can use: battle, fight, war, all words of violence, all words of violent conflict. So I don't know that there are words that denote, that are specific to intellectual conflict. And that would be interesting to figure out.
Yeah. So I was just a thought that I'd had. Of course, the other option is shrug. There is the shrug option. And at some point we could talk more about,
well, I think the shrug option is only a real option, as Rand said herself, when the intellectual fighting option is not non-existent. So
right.
Option is between, if your option now is a revolution, then it's shrugging. So it's either shrug or a revolution. So one side is shrug revolution. On the other side is engage in the intellectual battle. So I don't think it's time to shrug yet, because I still think it's time to fight, and there's still too much good in the world. But people are shrugging. I mean, the fact is, people shrug all the time. In one way or another, people are businessmen or working less. People shrug at various degrees all the time.
Yep, exactly. No, I mean, you moved to Puerto Rico. That's a form of it.
Yeah.
Right?
So shrugging as a form of bringing down the world, which is what the Atlas Shrugged is about, is not an option today. Right? That's right. There's Greg Salamiri actually has a talk on the shrugging option, which is in the East Store. I think he gave it at one of the conferences.
That would be.
Greg Salamiri has a talk in the Ayn Rand East Store. I don't know if it's on YouTube, but it's definitely in the East Store, on the shrug option.
Okay, so we could take I mean, for me, the one option that's out is to retaliate by making government stronger. I just don't see practically how that would.
It's the same argument about immigration. Oh my God, government is so big. They're giving out welfare and they're regulating our lives. So let's give them more power to regulate another area that they haven't been regulated. It's just, let's get, government is too leftist. So let them control the border with what do you call it? Ideological screenings. I mean, it's just bizarre that the solution to too much statism is to grow the state.
Right. That's my thought as well. But then the last question, and this is really one for, an Onkar or Greg or somebody like that, is drawing a distinction between applying a principle within a context and either being a pragmatist or maybe in a principled way saying we are now in a context of war where certain principles just don't apply anymore. Somehow in all of these confusions and arguments and debates, there seems to be some basic confusion about that.
When are we at war? I mean, again, I think Ayn Rand gives us three.
Who's being a pragmatist and who's applying a principle within a context?
Yeah. Okay.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that this whole debate has, gotten me to try, let's put our head around this better and avoid it. And a lot of it is we're in the mixed economy situation, and that can, I guess, make some of these situations, these analyses more difficult. So anyway, so I left you with puzzles. What's the good news? How about this? The good news is Kanye tweeting about philosophy.
Yeah. I'm waiting for the opportunity to meet Kanye and have a discussion about Ayn Rand with Kanye West. So who knows? Who knows? Maybe something's in the works.
In general, he seems to have a decent sense of life. Unfortunately, he likes Trump, but he's
also a wacko. He's a complete nutcase. So I don't know that what it means to say he has some good tweets, but I don't know what that means in terms of, because you remember how he behaved in one of the Grammys where he got up and he objected to somebody getting the prize.
Oh, right.
Crazy. So, who's he married to? Who's Kanye West married to?
Kardashian, right?
I mean, that should denounce you to hell forever.
Okay,
I mean,
I'll tell you.
Family cannot be sane. They cannot be in any way a healthy human being.
Okay, one thing is there's a repeated theme in a lot of his tweets, which is on the theme of motivation by love versus fear, which is really nice to see. He's also got quite an individualist streak in him. But
Trump motivates by fear, so I don't know how you can be a Trump supporter and believe in motivation by love.
Well, and that's the thing. I think it's Trump's sort of willingness to stand up against the establishment, and he's strong. And he called it dragon energy that Trump has. So he doesn't like Trump for anything that's actually fundamental, I think, to Trump. It's some. I don't know.
I mean, I just don't. I mean, it's Kanye. I'm not. I skipped the hip hop thing. I skipped what do you call it? Popular music.
No, me too.
Skipped what's hip hop and
rap,
all that. it never entered my consciousness, that part of the culture. So I don't really know who Kanye West is, other than he's married to Kardashian and he's done some crazy things on television. And now suddenly
And he sells a lot of clothing.
He's quoting, what's his name? Jordan Peterson. And, so, I don't know, but who knows? The world is shrinking. The world is flat. And the ability to communicate with people is pretty stunning. And, stay tuned. Who knows what's going to happen? Oh, I need to say this. If any of you are in Chicago, I'll be in Chicago with Dave Rubin, talk about Kanye West. I'll be in Chicago with Dave Rubin. I don't know why Dave and Kanye West and
maybe he'll show up.
It's all mushed up, but I'll be in Chicago on Wednesday. Wednesday, we're doing an event at the University of Illinois, Chicago. It's free, not like the Jordan Peterson stuff where you have to pay $100, right? I'm not up to that level. I can barely get you guys to give me a little contribution here on YouTube of $5, but I'm not quite there. But I'll be talking to Dave Rubin in front of hopefully a 200 live full audience at the university there. Maybe Antifa will show up. You never know. So, that might be fun. You should all come and help us. What else? So that is going to happen on Wednesday. You can find more information on it on Facebook, on my Facebook or on yaronbrookshow.com. Also, I'm going to be in Israel for like 3 big events. I'm going to be speaking at my alma mater for the first time ever, the Technion, the Israel Institute of Technology, on May 22nd at 10:30 in the morning. Again, information on that is on, God forbid, Facebook. How do we ever know when things are happening if not for Facebook? So if you're in Israel and you're northern Israel, come to the Technion, 10:30. I think it's a Tuesday morning. Then that evening, I'll be in Beersheba University, Ben Gurion University in Beersheba, doing a big event there. Those events are always a blast. They bring out a lot of people. And then I think on Thursday that week, the 24th, I'm doing a big debate with a leftist. Those of you who think I never debate leftists, big debate with a leftist. I think she's a member of the Knesset, a member of parliament. She's a well-known intellectual in Israel. We're expecting a massive audience. This is going to make the news. This is going to be a big deal. So if you're in the Tel Aviv area, and then I'm trying to see if we can organize something in Jerusalem as well. I don't know exactly when I'm going to have the time. And then, of course, there's the Atlas Shrugged Award for Best Startup in Israel will be happening on my birthday, May 23rd, at the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange in Israel. I won't tell you how old I am, but I'm getting old. 60 is now just looming, just over the horizon. So it's scary. So I'll be doing all those lectures in Israel. So lectures are going to be on capitalism. They're going to be on inequality. They're going to be on all the fun issues about socialism, capitalism, everything. Debates. So join us in Israel. And then I'm thinking if there's anything else. Yes. Thank you to all the people who added to Patreon after my last appeal. Because of you, we are now 3 short of my goal. And my goal was the end of next week, but now we're going to make the goal the end of today. I need 3 people to go and make a contribution to Patreon. People who listen to the show, who value the show, who gain something for the show, whether you're on Facebook, on Blog Talk, or on YouTube, maybe ask questions on the show, but who haven't yet supported the show financially on Patreon, patreon.com/Yaron Brook Show. I just need 3 people to get to the goal of 400 patrons, which granted is somewhat of a random number, but 400 is a nice round number. It's on the way to 500, 1,000, 10,000, on the way to great riches from Patreon. So join us. Amy has a Patreon site as well.
Actually, I've paused mine right now.
Amy's paused her Patreon.
I'm rejiggering what I'm going to be doing so that people know what they're paying for. Yes, I want people to know what they're paying for.
Right. So pay me, and we'll get.
I'm going to continue to be here. So yeah.
Yeah. Good. And I think what's happening next Saturday? We don't have a show next Saturday.
We do not know.
Okay, because I'm out of town.
But then the week after.
I think the week after is okay.
Excellent. Beautiful. Thank you.
I'm back the week after, but next Saturday I'm in Chicago. So, and I'm in a seminar all day. So I might do something in the evening by myself. All right, guys. Thank you. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you
Good
very
show.
much.
Good topics, good questions. Thank you, everybody, to listening. Thank you, Pam. Let us know when you go sailing, when you leave, because I know they leave and then they come back like 5 months later. You don't call me a mere child. Pam's been calling me a mere child for at least 20-something years. 25. We're that old, Pam. You've been calling me a child for 25 years. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon. Bye.